Hello, everyone. This is the French proficiency tests and your teaching career information session, where you will learn about the CÉFRANC, the DELF, the CEL, and the TECFÉE. My name is Lara. I'm the Education Career Advisor here at the McGill Faculty of Education in the Internships and Student Affairs Office, and I'll be walking you through all the different sections of today's session. All right. So we're going to get started. I'm going to give you a brief overview of who I am, how I support students, and give you my contact information. In case you have any follow-up questions after this session, you can get in touch with me. Then we will talk about which teaching positions require a French proficiency test, and I will go through each school board and centre de service scolaire that we've contacted in advance to give you as much information as we can. Third, we will do the different types of exams that are offered. We'll walk you through how to get registered, what are their fees like, what are the different test components, and then finally we will talk about resources, so how you can prepare yourself for these exams. Okay, all right. So just to get started, again, my name is Lara Franco and I am the Education Career Advisor. You can contact me using the contact details listed here. And you can also find a lot of great information on the ISA website. And this is where you'll also find my booking link to book an individual appointment. Okay. So in addition to individual career advising, I also provide career development workshops. I come into the different classrooms within the Faculty of Ed and visit students throughout their time at McGill just to give you some good career development tips. I also host special events like the career fair coming up in February and information sessions as well, such as this one tonight. Okay. So as I mentioned, we'll be walking through some specific school board information, starting with EMSB, Lester B. Pearson, Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board, Riverside School Board, New Frontier School Board, Centre de Service Scolaire de Montréal, Marguerite Bourgeois, and Pointe de l'Île. So we'll be covering all of these. Had some great support in researching and contacting these school boards to get the most up-to-date information for all of you. So what you learned tonight is good right now, but I always encourage you to double check with whichever school board you're planning to work with, just to make sure you know, you've double checked that yes, indeed, that French test is still being accepted. Okay, so just making sure of all that before you go ahead and write one. All right, so the English Montreal School Board, they do highly recognize the Bachelor of Education in Kindergarten Elementary, Pédagogie de l'Immersion Française. So this is the one thing that qualifies educators to be considered for French immersion teaching assignments at the elementary level, okay? Because this is a KLM bachelor's degree, you are only allowed to teach at the elementary level, not at the secondary level. And this will allow you to teach in French immersion classrooms, which many EMSB schools offer French immersion, okay? Another option here that they've mentioned is if you would like to be a French specialist, so you like to teach French, you know, in the elementary setting to elementary students, French only pretty much as a language subject, or in the secondary, in secondary as well. It will depend on your brevet qualification. So if, for example, you got a secondary math degree at McGill, and then you go and take the 15 credit FSL program at McGill, then you will be eligible to teach secondary FSL. If you've taken a Bachelor of KLM without the PIF designation, and then you go and do the PIF certificate at McGill, then you will be able to teach as a French specialist in the elementary only, okay? So again, thinking about that second language certification that you would need to get at a recognized university, such as the one I'll talk about at the end of today's session that is offered at McGill. Okay. If you're interested in teaching in a bilingual classroom, one of these three could be an option for you. So you could do the CEL, test 1 and 2, the CÉFRANC test 1 and 2, or the DELF test B2 and B1, okay? So again, your level or your subject is based on your brevet qualifications. So again, if you're KLM, then you would be eligible to teach after taking the CEL, the CÉFRANC, or the DELF in that area. And then the DELF is also recognized for specialist jobs in the bilingual setting. So you would need to first be specialized as prior to completing the DELF. So for example, if they have a contract to teach art in French or phys ed in French or math in French, you would need to become a specialist first and then go write the DELF so that you could teach it in French as well. All right. Just a quick note on EMSB, something they mentioned to us in our research. They mentioned that they do not provide a numerical value to the CÉFRANC, the CEL, or the DELF certifications. So basically what that means, yes, on the CÉFRANC website, it says that the 60% is considered a minimum passing grade. However, EMSB really wants you to do much better than that. They're not necessarily going to assign a specific cutoff or a specific number, but they really want you to get as close as possible to the highest mark in each component, because they don't look at the overall score. They look at each component individually, and you need to perform well in each component. Okay. Lester B. Pearson School Board. These requirements only apply to FSL teachers at the elementary or secondary levels, as well as French Resource, Sciences Humaines Immersion, and Sciences Immersion. So they only recognize the DALF or the CÉFRANC. They do not recognize the CEL. So the DALF would be at a higher level than EMSB is requiring, a C1 or a C2 level, and they need you to have a passing mark of at least 60 out of 100. And of that 60 points, 15 minimum in each of the categories written and oral. The CÉFRANC, they want you to write test 1 and test 2. Again, minimum 60% in those tests as well. And you'll see the detailed components here. For the discours, you need 24 out of 40 minimum. And for langue, you need 36 out of 60 minimum. For Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board, again, only teaching FSL requires completing the CEL, the CÉFRANC, or the DELF. And they recommend you contact human resources directly to inquire about your specific situation or your teaching interests. Okay, so if you're not quite sure, but you do want to open more doors at Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board, you definitely want to try and get a chat with HR just to say, hey, this is my teachable subject at McGill. This is my level. Would it open more doors for me to take, one of these tests? If so, which one do you recommend? Okay. At Riverside School Board, in order to be considered to teach in French, a test may be required if you're not certified in PIF or in French immersion. So this proficiency test will be administered internally by the RSV Human Resources Department. At this time, it is a written test. However, they mentioned that they're reworking this component. So right now, if you want to work in French at RSB, you would be doing an internal RSB written test in French. At this time, CÉFRANC, CEL, or DELF are not required. Again, highly recommend you contact human resources directly to inquire about the details of your specific situation. New Frontier School Board, again, similar to Riverside School Board. It's really helpful if you have already completed the CÉFRANC, CEL, or DELF. This will really support your application for French teaching positions. If you have not done one of these tests, then New Frontier School Board will send their candidates a French assessment through Talent Central, which tests educators on reading comprehension, grammar, etc. Okay. Again, if you have any questions about this, or you want to know, if there's an advantage to taking a French proficiency exam, I highly recommend you contact human resources directly. Moving on to the French Centre de Service Scolaire, so CSS de Montréal mentions that if you've studied at an English university, you have to provide proof that you've completed a French test recognized by the ministry in order to be admissible for the hiring process. So ideally, they'd like you to have this before you apply, either the CEL, Version B, or the CÉFRANC, okay? Those are the two that they recognize. They did not mention DELF, so that's why it's not here. So making sure you're writing either the CEL or the CÉFRANC. So again, to teach any subject at CSSDM other than ESL, you do need to have at least 60% or higher and on both sections of the test. Okay, so both code linguistique and rédaction. They highly recommend you get these tests done before you apply to their school board. For CSS Marguerite Bourgeois, again, the CEL or the CÉFRANC are recognized. It's important that you get details about these tests on the MEQ website, the Ministry of Education of Quebec. And you take a look at which ones are required to teach in the Centre de Service Scolaire Marguerite Bourgeois. CSSMB also mentioned that if teachers have not taken or passed the French exam, they can support teachers with distance training through one of their adult training centers so that you can take and pass the exam, which is a mandatory requirement for permanent teaching jobs. However, this does not prevent you from applying for and obtaining a contract to teach. You will need to still pass the exam at some point. Again, no time frame was given specifically, but I'm sure if you contact their HR team, they would be able to fill you in. So say, for example, you are in their system, you apply for a contract, you get that contract, you may have, 4 months to go write either the CEL or the CÉFRANC, or you might need to write it right away as soon as possible so that you can keep that position. For CSS de la Pointe de l'Île, again, they recognize the same ones as the other, Centre de Service Scolaire, the CÉFRANC, or the CEL Version B. They, however, have mentioned that you don't necessarily need it before you interview. It's possible to become a supply teacher before writing the French test. However, you need the French test finished in order to access the priority list and to eventually get a regular, permanent position. Okay, so you can start subbing without a test at CSSPI, but you will have to write a test in order to get on their permanent hire list. Okay, so that wraps up the overview of the different school boards in the Centre de Service Scolaire in the Montreal area. We will share the slides with the participants so that you can review these things in more detail depending on where you're interested in teaching. Now going into the exams themselves and what you can do to prepare. So we'll be talking about all 4 exams that are used in Quebec: the CÉFRANC, the DELF, the CEL, and the TECFÉE. So for the CÉFRANC, this is a Quebec test. It's actually administered by CSSPI, and it really focuses on French writing skills for various positions in education. So nobody outside of the teaching profession would be taking this test. It's really written for Anglophone educators that are interested in teaching in French, okay? Your subject specialization may require you to take a different CÉFRANC exam. So again, if you're teaching TESOL versus other subjects, you might need to, again, call HR, verify with them which tests you need to take. Exams are held typically once a month during the school year on a Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. In St. Leonard. So you would be heading out on a Saturday morning to write your exam. And there's part 1, grammar, which is multiple choice, and part 2, which is writing. Ways to prepare: you can take a French course as an elective at McGill or look into the preparation guides provided by the CÉFRANC website. So they have a guide for each type of test that you can look through, some sample questions, and they give you kind of a grading scheme of how they assess the answers for each component. The first registration for the CÉFRANC would be $90. If you need to retake the writing portion because you're not satisfied with the grade, you would pay $60, and to retake the grammar is $50. Payment can only be accepted by credit card. A passing grade is 60%, technically speaking, but some school boards, such as EMSB, may require you to have a higher grade. Okay. You can register by phone or online, and you can contact them with any of your questions directly. The DELF is administered by the French government, so the government in France, and it's an internationally recognized test. Okay, so there are 6 separate diplomas to certify you in 4 areas: oral comprehension, oral expression, written comprehension, and written expression. These are valid for life and recognized worldwide. Okay, so for most teaching positions, I think the lowest I've seen is the DELF B1. You need to have at least the B1. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with Lester B. Pearson and other school boards, they want you to have the C1 and C2. Okay, so again, double checking with the HR department which one you should be writing before you sit down and or register for one of these tests. Each competency has a maximum value of 25 points. The minimum passing grade is 50 out of 100, which is a minimum grade of 5 out of 25 for each competency. If you want to learn more information, I recommend you go to the DALF website. Their examination center, the one that's most readily accessible, would be at Lester B. Pearson School Board. And the cost is $225 for the DELF B1 or B2 and $305 for the DALF C1 or C2. Again, if you're interested in teaching in a different province, this one is going to be much more widely recognized than the CÉFRANC, which is Quebec specific. So if you're thinking about teaching in Ontario, BC, anywhere else in Canada, or even internationally, because this test is created and administered by the government of France, it is recognized worldwide. A bit more information about the DELF. Because it is an internationally administered exam, they only have 3 times a year that it's offered: in November, in March, and in June. And the French ministry determines the dates for this international exam. It's written on the same day in many countries around the world, so there's no flexibility with the date there. And they recommend some self-assessment tools on their website. So you can look at the links there and see which sources might be useful for you to recognize whether you should take the DELF B1, B2 or the DELF C1 or C2. For the CEL, the Service d'Évaluation Linguistique, it is administered by the Institut Jacques Couture at TELUC. It is available online on your own schedule. Please note that not all school boards recognize the CEL, especially the English school boards don't tend to recognize the CEL. So making sure that you're double checking whether it's a good one to take or not. Again, there are different versions of the exam, A, B, or C. You really need to look into which one you need to sign up for depending on your intended purpose. So typically, as we just mentioned, all of the francophone Centre de Service Scolaire have been asking for version B, so you'd be wanting to take that. And then you have to get good grades on both part 1 and part 2. We recommend that you do your research and take either the DELF or the CÉFRANC because these exams are more widely recognized. But again, this is up to you. If it's easier for you to take the CEL, then that's great. They do have a free preparation manual on their website. They have some self-assessment tests you can do, and you can book a preparation class of 5 sessions, 10 hours total, to help you prepare for this exam. Finally, the TECFÉE, which is the Test de Certification en Français écrit pour l'enseignement. It is the French equivalent of the EETC exam, which all of you have either written or will be writing. So as a McGill student, you will never need to take the TECFÉE exam. Don't ever sign up for it because it is not for you. Okay, you write the EETC, and then you write either the CÉFRANC, the CEL, or the DELF. Finally, I want to just go over that McGill University now offers a graduate certificate in French immersion pedagogy. So this is a 15-credit course, 5 mandatory courses that can be completed entirely online, with the option of completing complementary courses in person in the summer term. Okay. So this is a French immersion certificate intended for teachers who hold a teaching certificate from a recognized university. I do believe there are students from across Canada that sign up for this so that they can get qualified to teach French immersion in their home province. But it's quite popular in Quebec as well, because then it opens doors to those French immersion teaching roles, such as the ones at EMSB. So you need to have a couple components in order to register for this. You need to have a 3.0 GPA minimum. You need to provide a letter of intent, your CV, 2 letters of recommendation, and your transcript during the application process. And you also need to have a proof of French proficiency. So either you have to write the CÉFRANC, 70% or more, DELF B2, 50 points or more, DALF C1, 50 points or more, or take an internal language test offered by McGill. Okay. The applications for winter 2024, so for this upcoming term, have already closed. However, the applications for fall 2024, the deadline for Canadian students is June 11th. So just make sure you're reaching that deadline if you're interested in taking it in the fall. So you've completed a French proficiency exam. Now what? Okay. So once you complete the CÉFRANC, the DELF, the CEL, the McGill PIP certificate, and you're happy with the results, make sure you provide those results as soon as possible to your school board's HR department in order to have this proof of French proficiency added to your employee file. I also recommend that you add this French proficiency to your CV, to your teaching CV, so that when you're applying for job postings that require French, people know that you've passed that exam, and you can even include the grade you received on it if you'd like. Okay. So step 1, send your results to HR. Step 2, add it to your CV. I have some French resources here. So Allo Prof, Vitrine Linguistique, the list goes on. These are all really great DIY French resources that you can use on your own time to get better at French, get better at French grammar, French writing, that kind of thing, to help you prepare for those exams. Or you can review the links here for the exam-specific resources. So CÉFRANC, DELF, CEL all have their own preparation options, or you can take the PIP certificate at McGill, which is a nice graduate certificate that you can add to help you with your French teaching. So just to summarize today's session, if you are interested in teaching English in an English school board, and that's all you are looking to do, no French exam is needed, okay? So no need to go and write a test. And then if you're asking yourself what teaching positions require a French exam or equivalent, you can review this session that we looked at today. All of the information is up to date as of November 2023. However, I strongly encourage you to get yourself informed. In all cases, I recommend you verify this information by contacting your school board of interest.